Be admitted into the room now, and give everybody a second to get connected and turn their screens on if you want to. I appreciate we've continued to get more feedback from people in the last couple of days. I think we have incorporated most of it. There's a few side-by-side things, some stuff we added. We tried to add more than we took away because we there had generally built consensus around the stuff that was in there. So the input we got, I've done my best to try to add it to what we have, making some changes. And I'm going to highlight, I have one or two questions for people as we go through. First question to the members of the committee: do you all have the or of the platform working group here, do you all have the latest draft which we emailed earlier today? Is there anybody that does not have, that needs that draft sent to them before we start discussing? Please speak up now. So we don't have a secretary for this meeting. So I guess the other thing that we should, or for this conversation, the other thing we should do is just make a note. I'm going to make a note of everyone who is in attendance. It's not really a formal meeting, so I'll make a note and I will share the notes after this call. I see Corey Roman, Elaine Harris, Floyd Sayre, Jared Powell, Ken Collinson. Hey there, Ken. Pam Garrison, Patty Hamilton, and Dottie Berger. And if others log on, we'll double check as we go and make sure that the attendance notes reflect that. There was a lot of good feedback on this over this last week. As we're looking through this, I know Dottie, I hope you'll take a close look and make sure that we've tried to incorporate I know you sent another round of feedback specifically addressing the Comstock Act. That is an example of a specific type of point that was a pretty specific policy point. We got a few other things like that. I wasn't sure, there was another submission regarding a constitutional amendment having to do with ballot initiatives or money in politics. Those were new ideas that to my knowledge, the party hadn't taken a position on. So this is our platform. This is not, this is not intended to encompass our positions on various policy matters. There are really only a very few particular policy points that are addressed in the Democratic platform. My suggestion about matters like that, we do address Roe. We do address the codification of Roe. That's been in the platform. The party is in very broad consensus about that. As I go through, I hope people will take note of those things. If you have a particular policy point that is not expressed in this, please consider whether the best first step for these types of things would be to propose them as resolutions, like we did, like the Economic Bill of Rights is in here because it was proposed to the Democratic Party, to the Democratic State Executive Committee as a resolution. It was adopted by the State Democratic Executive Committee. So we've had a process for reviewing it, voting on it, vetting it, and I felt more confident in including it in the platform as a part of our broad statement of core values. So particular resolutions can be brought forth at the convention on issues like Comstock or issues like ballot initiatives or any particular constitutional amendments that people want to propose. It seems traditionally the evolution of our platform has been such that if we're going to take a policy position in the platform, we first go through a process of reviewing it, vetting it, considering it as a resolution, and only thereafter sort of elevating it to the level of a core principle that we voice specifically, expressly as a part of our platform. Somebody's got their hand up, and Dottie, oh, that's you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that the whole platform is a policy initiative, but be that as it may, the reason that I brought up Comstock, and I don't want to take up a lot of time on this, is that it's apparently, from everything I'm reading and hearing, it's proving to be very useful to voters, very helpful to voters, and especially for candidates from our party running for elective positions. And so I think it would help them to have something like that in the platform. But that's my opinion.
Well, I hear you. And we do address Roe. We do address sort of the constitutional apparatus that surrounds Comstock. So we do address that issue, because you're right. It's a timely issue. It's a core issue. Let me go through here and I'll just recap the current draft of the platform, and feel free for folks to raise their hands, or just speak up and interrupt me if you raise your hand and I don't see you. I apologize in advance. I'm trying to look at these two screens. So West Virginia Party Platform: building modern infrastructure and equal opportunity for all. Who are the West Virginia Democrats? We said this was the product of our last call. We are an open party focused on building a better future for all. That means modern infrastructure and equal opportunities for all. So slide 3. Then we talked about what do West Virginia Democrats believe. These are the 10 core values of the party. This is the stuff, the 10 sort of categories that make up the national party platform. Most states have basically these 10 core value areas. This platform explains these core values and suggests ways to discuss and contrast them with the GOP. And I'm going to stop right here to make a note that will apply throughout this presentation. We referenced the GOP. Some people suggested we should replace the phrase GOP with the consensus was with the word extremist views, or the extremists, or extremism, as appropriate in the context, so that we're contrasting the Democratic Party as a big tent party against not simply the GOP, but against the extremism that has overtaken the GOP. I'd like to, maybe I'll go through the whole thing, but let's have a discussion about whether to replace any or all or some of the references to the GOP with the word extremism, to reflect that we're not necessarily drawing a contrast between ourselves and moderate members of the GOP. They may share a lot of our values, and in fact, we want them to come over and be a part. What we're contrasting with, according to these comments that I've received, that is the extremism that is now defining the GOP. So think about that as we go through. Slide 4. These are the urgent items. These are what we've discussed as the most presently resonant top issues that we think will persist over the next 4 years: reproductive freedom, child care, and protecting democracy. And this does lead off with supporting reproductive freedom, opposing the repeal of Roe. Next, slide 5. We moved this up. This is the Economic Bill of Rights. This is not just a part of the labor section of the platform. This is now, a core initial presentation of how we discuss our core value system. So we put the heading here: how do we talk about these values? So the opening slide is, who are we? The second slide is, what are our core values? Here they are. what is slide 3 would be the most urgent items. And then this is the Economic Bill of Rights gives us a vocabulary. How do we talk about these values? We heard a lot from Troy and others. This needs to be at the forefront. We say what our core values are. We say who we are as Democrats. And then this platform is going to give people right up front a vocabulary for how do we talk about these values. And this uses a rights language. And that's something the party has voted upon and adopted and embraced. And so here it is right at the forefront of the presentation. So after the Economic Bill of Rights, then we go into the 10 core value areas. Not much changed on infrastructure, so I'll go through from slide 6 to slide 7. Infrastructure slides didn't really change. It's a product of a lot of input from Patty's group and others. Slide 8, labor. Now, we got a lot of comments over the last week from our labor friends and partners, Elaine and Barb and Ken. Please, you all take a look at this slide. I think we may all just you suggested. We did keep in the and maybe there's a formatting issue. We may need to make some make sure the text is visible there. But we did keep in the sentence about benefits should be streamlined and easier to access, in addition to everything else you guys added. That was an important item because that relates to an issue we heard about a lot during COVID and thereafter, unemployment benefits. That hit a lot of people. It's a labor adjacent issue, workers' comp and unemployment. I thought it's important to keep that in there, but I think otherwise we incorporated everything you all suggested into this slide. And I just want to pause there to give there were a lot of comments from Elaine, Barb, and Ken. Does that slide look better to you guys? Slide number 9, labor is the foundation of our party. I mean, we said originally that slide said is the foundation of our wealth. I mean, you could say it's the foundation of everything. I don't know if we want to say you guys suggested saying our party. We could say of our society. I mean, maybe that's the better thing to say, because we want to make a statement of that the centrality of labor is a core value for Democrats. So it's about more than being the foundation of our party. It's that we're saying this is the foundation of our economy, our society.
Workforce, maybe.
What is that?
Workforce. I'm just trying to think of a.
Well,
Labor.
If this is a Democrat Party platform, then we're speaking to our party. That's why. And Ken, I don't think Barb was able to get on. She's in another meeting, but that was our thinking of changing that to our party.
Oh, okay. I don't have. I thought we were looking for a different word, so I just thrown one out there. I do have a question, and it's not. I know nothing about union elections. It seems outside the. Anything the party or the legislature, I have no idea, but
I can explain. When we're speaking about union elections, it's not for union elections of officers. This is where we've went and organized a workplace, and union elections is once we go to the employer and say, by cards or, by petition, whatever, that we believe we have, a majority of workers that wish to have a union. And if the employer gives us voluntary recognition, then we're done. If they say, they want an election, they don't give us the voluntary recognition, then we have to go to the board, the National Labor Relations Board, and at that point, to ask for an election. So what we're saying is once you get to that point, that the union election should be neutral without interference, ensuring workers the right to vote. Because what happens often is that we'll get to the election, and the employers will hold captive audience meetings. When we ask them to remain neutral, that's exactly, all parties remain neutral.
So the way I read it is kind of directed at unions. So this is directed at the employer.
Well, that's
Like I
why we
said-
got, that's why we go on to say union elections should be neutral, because we would be driving if we have to go to an
I
election.
understand that, but nowhere does it say the word employer. I mean, I'm speaking from
It does. It does.
ignorance.
It does say it in there.
Where
once
I'm
elections are
I'm trying to read
certified.
this on my phone. So.
Yeah, no, once elections are certified,
Oh, the company and union. Okay.
union should bargain in good faith to obtain a first contract. And
Okay, I got you. I see it now.
Once we get to the board and and the election is held, and an election, there's there's enough votes to for the election to be certified, then that first contract is very difficult. And
Okay.
when we sit down to bargain, they'll stall, they'll drag things out to the point that what happens with workers, they get really distraught, they get discouraged, and they're like, what's happening here? And so, and under this administration, under the Biden administration, we got behind with the Trump administration, because they were trying to defund, cripple the Department of Labor, the NLRB and all, and they got really backed up on cases. And so that's really all we're asking that should happen there.
Okay, I
be
just thought,
helpful?
I mean, I read it, I know nothing, and so I thought we were buttoning our heads into somewhere that we had no business, but
Oh, no.
okay.
Yeah, how it
Do you-
originally read, it was confusing. So that's, when Ken.
It's very, it has I mean, for someone who's never been in a union or participated in an election, it is almost, yeah, I'm cleared up now. I did think we were, what in the world would we have to do with the union election? So go ahead.
Well,
It's okay.
could we clarify this? But instead of saying union elections should be neutral, should we spell it out and say when workers vote whether to have union representation, those elections should be neutral without interference, and then go on from there, so that it explains a little bit more
Detail.
what setting we're talking? Does that help? Does that make it clear?
To me, it's a little bit critical. It sounds like the union is being criticized. Union elections should be neutral. Again, coming from.
I'm sorry, I'm driving, and so it's hard, but if I could just jump in, this really sounds like one of those places where we could take directly from the Economic Bill of Rights on page 4 and title this with "Workers have a right to collective bargaining and a voice to the workplace," and then this is all subsection in that affirmative right that we're fighting for as a party. And maybe that would help clear up exactly that we're talking about stopping the obstruction that happens, that it is at some point legislatively permitted or condoned for companies to do everything in their power to undermine elections. I just wanted to throw that out there because as I was listening to the conversation, it seems to me like that might be a way to really focus this section. And I don't have the document in front of me. I'm sorry.
I like what Sam suggested, because it's not always legislatively. It's how employers with not a strong Department of Labor or board to behave. So Ken, you jump in. I think, and I've seen maybe some nods or others that thought that may further clarify it.
I think what Sam said does set the tone, and then we finish it with that. The only thing I would like to, Troy talked a little bit about collective bargaining. We've always supported collective bargaining for public employees. Somewhere, I think, in the labor section, that should be mentioned, that because obviously we still don't have collective bargaining for public employees in West Virginia.
And we had that in
Yeah.
all what we proposed initially, Sam, it's been taken out.
Yeah, I see that. You're right about that. Let me pull that up.
Yep.
So that is a policy position. I didn't. I don't know that that was in the platforms. If that is is that a position? Well, certainly the AFL has taken that.
It's
And
been in platform for
is
years. National
okay.
and state.
Hey, Sam,
I think if that's the position, yeah.
When I served on the national platform committee back in 88, 89, it's been there, and it's been there nationally ever since. And it's been in our state party.
Well, we had decades of Democrat majority, and it never happened.
It's true.
There is that was a little bit of my ambivalence about it, Elaine. But let's look at this is a good question because if it's been in the platform before, then there is a precedent for that. I think it's important to recognize that. I mean, I think my question about that was whether it fell into the category of a resolution type issue. Let me look at the current platform because there are Democrats that have opposed that, and I was in group. I think we should put it in the platform, and concerns about it. At the convention, we could talk and then hopefully find a way to keep it in. But it has been a debate issue within the Democratic Party. So in general, the drafting principle was to try and focus that we're not going to be subject to, I just feel about that. It's just been one of the only thorny issues. So with layering store.
Well, I serve on the National DNC Labor Council, and you can rest assured it's going to be there this time on the national level.
Hey, Sam, this is Floyd Sayre. Can I make a comment?
Floyd, it looks like Sam got disconnected. As soon as he hops back in, I'll get him put back in here. Hold
on. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
My suggestion is that I'm looking at the current platform, Elaine.
Yes.
And here's how it looks to me like it was stated under section B2 of the current state Democratic Party platform under bargaining rights. There are two sentences. Number one, it says, we urge state and local officials to support collective bargaining for improved wages, benefits, and working conditions. I would suggest that we take and use that language because that's the language that has been in the party platform. Sounds like up to this point, it does touch on that issue. What do you think about that approach, Elaine? Because that apparently that to me, in looking at the current state party platform, that's the way they address that issue.
Yeah, there's always been some form of verbiage for collective bargaining.
And there's certainly collective bargaining language here for the, the economy. I mean, our first point is Democrats believe in strengthening the voices of all workers on the job. Why don't we just add right next to that this sentence from the current platform, which says, we urge state and local officials to support collective bargaining for improved wages, benefits, and working conditions.
I'm good with that. If Ken's so good with it.
Yeah, Elaine, I'm good with that, Sam.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Ken, as a way to address that issue without,
Yes.
Producing new language?
Yes, that
Okay.
it gets the point across.
Hey,
Does it-
Sam, this
Yes.
is Floyd Sayre. Can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Why don't we put in there that we adhere to all aspects of the National Labor Relations Act? That covers all this. And then you can put text in addition to that. Would that work?
If I could just say, I think it may cause some confusion because it's broad. I mean, we've addressed, as far as the changing the wording as far as the union from union elections to the language Sam suggested in that part, and then adding to what's already exists as it pertains to collective bargaining. I think it says that because there's, for folks that may not be familiar with the National Labor Relations Act, certainly I would say many are familiar with collective bargaining.
That's true.
And the other problem with the National Labor Relations Act, Floyd, is of course it doesn't do all these things that we want, that we're saying we want. So that's I hear your point, but I think we're getting at the substance of the substantive rights, protected concerted activity, universal bargaining, all that's voiced in here. So let me ask you about the next slide, which is slide 9. We received some comments here. This would be probably one of the main slides where people said, should we consider substituting the phrase GOP for the phrase extremists or extremism? So when we say, right now we say, this is the contrast slide where we say, here, not only do we stand for X, Y, and Z, these 10 values, but here's specifically why our policies are different than the others and better than the others. And so the decision point for us right now in drafting is whether we want to keep it as is or change the phrase GOP to the phrase extremists. Do people have thoughts about that? And again, this is directed towards emphasizing we're a big tent party and we would welcome moderate GOP voters to think of themselves as Democrats.
I mean, GOP stands for Grand Old Party, and it sure isn't that anymore. And I just don't think we need to give it any recognition whatsoever. I think extremism would be fine.
I feel like there must be some sort of way where I'm not a fan of either of these, and I'm trying to think of what an alternative would be. But I don't like extremists for the same reason I don't think it was politically savvy for Secretary Clinton to refer to a basket of deplorables. Like I'm not sure that it brings as many people in who might fall along that line as would make it worthwhile. And at the same time, GOP just seems like I don't know. I think a lot of my issue here is simply I'm of two minds. On the one mind, it is important to have a villain in a story because the hero can only be as good as the villain is bad. Superman and Lex Luthor, for instance. On the other hand, it's you like juxtaposing ourselves to them this blatantly in the platform seems to me still allowing them to dictate our story without giving people the invitation in of people who might largely agree with the GOP on some things, or so they think. And I'm sorry, I wish I had a conclusory statement that said this is what I think we should put in there instead, but I don't. I just wanted to sort of air why I'm a little uneasy about both of those. And thank you everyone for your time.
I see Dottie Burgers raised his hand.
Yeah, there are people who believe that there are extremists in the Democratic Party as well, whether or not you agree with that. And I'm concerned that people may think we're referring to them, and I understand that we're not. I also agree that I don't think we should be calling it the Grand Old Party, because at least one of those is incorrect. So I suggest calling it the Republican Party, and let's just call it the Republican Party. And I agree with Troy that you need a villain, and by God, that's the villain. And everyone, with very few exceptions, has kissed the ring. So it's the Republican Party.
Could we be more so
Simple.
general as to just simply say our opponents?
That
I mean,
seems
that's one of the things I
wishy
think
to me.
the Republicans do really well, is not just hammering on the Democrats, but basically saying everybody who's not with them is un-American and hates you. And I'm not saying we should take that message, but I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way we can allude to that. And now I'm done. I think I've said every thought I could have on this. Thank you.
Well, we've mentioned Big Tent, so we've said that often enough. So I think that's clear. I don't know.
Well, that's a good simple suggestion, Dottie. Go ahead, Floyd.
I'm concerned that a lot of the people in the AFL-CIO affiliated construction trades, even the Lanes Union, these people are Republicans. They may be laborers, but they're still Republicans. And we don't want to get out in the weeds and insult these people, I wouldn't think.
Well, you think we won't be insulting them by calling them the GOP?
No, I don't. But radical or some other extremist, that
Then
might go too far.
You take the chance of offending people in our party.
Yes. Well, what I'm saying is there's people in the labor movement, and I'm talking about labor, the AFL-CIO. There have even been times the AFL-CIO recently supported Republican candidates because there was no Democrats running, and they picked maybe the lesser of two evils. And so they supported Republicans because there are a lot of Republicans in the AFL-CIO.
May I make this suggestion? I hear you, Floyd, and it's a good point. Maybe the way to integrate all of these suggestions is to change the caption, to use Dottie's phrase of Republicans, but instead of just simply saying when Republicans win, West Virginia loses, we could say when Republicans govern, West Virginia loses, and we're focusing on what they've done, and then we can say when Republicans defunded childcare, that was bad. When Republicans attack public workers and unions, that was bad. And so it's not focused on just their mere identity, but really focusing on what they've done when given the chance to govern. How about that?
That sounds really good to me.
I think that makes a good connection that people aren't making, that who they're voting for is or who are doing these things. Yeah, I like governs.
This is only slightly tongue-in-cheek, but could we say crazy Republicans?
We could, but it would have benefit.
Well, I take it this was a good conversation. You made a great suggestion, Dottie. It's succinct. Well, let's just call them what they are, Republicans, and we'll focus on what they've done when given the chance to govern. It's all been bad. So unless others have more thoughts, that seems to be a good coalescence on that approach for this slide. So going to slide 10, when is human rights. I don't think anything really changed on this one for racial equity and LGBTQ issues. Slide 11 is criminal justice. Nothing changed on this. The only issue that that some folks had raised was whether we should make a statement, recognizing the importance or honoring the importance of law enforcement. We could just put in a sentence that honors that interest and says, we honor the critical role that law enforcement plays in our communities. Something to that effect, because it is an important constituency. It's an important aspect of people's experience in life, feeling secure, feeling comfortable with their families and their communities. And it's something that the Republicans hit us with. They hit us with for overlooking that concern and the interest in security. And so several commenters said, hey, where's the recognition about the need for the importance of security? Do people have thoughts about that?
I would like to propose that we absolutely list law enforcement as one among many first responders in our society. And I think it's really important that while I really value the importance of law enforcement, I think one of the things that separates us from the other side is that we think law enforcement should be focusing on law enforcement and shouldn't have to be doing mental health responses, first responder, all of these different type of activities that we end up just dumping on our police forces because because that's the one public sector where our opponents are okay throwing money at, when in fact they're part of a suite of services. And I don't know if there's any law enforcement officer around who would disagree in the acknowledgement that they are one among many essential services in our society. That would be my thought. I think it's absolutely important to not just say first responders, but to say first responders and then list who they are, what constituencies we're talking about. That would be my opinion.
Elaine has your hand up.
I would echo that, and part of our sector of membership is law enforcement, and I like Troy. I like what you said, because I had right on my tip of my tongue to say first responders, because again, they're out there on the forefront, and the other side does, and they talk a lot about what they would do for our first responders. But getting it done is a whole nother story. So, and then the other, they like to try to tag that we want to defund the police, which is an out and out lie. So I like what Troy said, and how we could put that in there, include it.
So we say Mike has his hand up.
Yeah, I like where that's going. I just wanted to, and I appreciate what Ken had to say, that one of many different, we support all first responders. However, this is in a section about criminal justice reform. So it's specifically about law enforcement, and many folks in law enforcement support what we've been trying to do with criminal justice reform, because it supports them and what they're doing and helps them focus on real issues instead of doing everybody else's job. So I think it's great to specifically, show our support for law enforcement and then the tough role that they have in the section on criminal justice reform. I just wanted to remind everybody, this is a section about criminal justice reform, correct?
Yes.
So that's why we would be singling out that profession. So yeah, that's great. I like it. Now, I'm sorry I get on late. I appreciate all the work y'all are doing. I'm gonna shut up now.
Are there other comments on this? The notes that I think go ahead.
Sam, I just have one thing to say about it. And so how we bring this out, but a lot of the problems that the police force is having and that we've had in West Virginia is lack of funding. 300 million just in deferred maintenance. And that's been a lot of why there hasn't been enough officers hired. A lot of the problems that we have is the GOP has just starved the police to death. And so, like I said, that's just a point I'd like to make, that a lot of the problems is the lack of resources.
So the way to integrate this that I'm hearing would be law enforcement and first responders have an essential role in securing and caring for our communities. We support them, or we support those goals. Is that,
and it's giving them the resources to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. So the slide 12 is human rights, reproductive freedom, codifying Roe. Do people have thoughts on the current presentation of this slide? I know there have been a lot of thoughts. We've tried to integrate them. People care a lot about this topic, and yet we wanted it to be concise and compelling. So are there any thoughts on slide 12, which is captioned human rights, reproductive freedom, codifying Roe?
Sam, I want to go back to just real quick urgent items where the first one is healthcare for all. Human rights require reproductive freedom. It's our second or third slide. With the repeal of Roe, women lost the freedom to obtain an abortion. The way I see it, they lost a lot more than that. Which is why I prefer reproductive freedom. I mean, they lost the right to maybe choose not to die. I think to obtain an abortion is a really, well, I don't want to say, it's a part of what they lost, but they lost a huge right of other things besides having an abortion. If I make, but I would just, and it's such a trigger word in West Virginia that I would take that word out of it's one of the first slides. Lost the freedom to, lost reproductive freedom, lost the freedom to control their lives, I don't know.
Mike, do you have thoughts on that?
Lost a lot more than just abortion. I think they lost dignity. They lost standing in society because we got something taken away that no one ever has. Lost a lot.
Okay, if I chime up, I said I'd shut up, but I'm going to chime in a little bit. I appreciate what Patty just said, and I think the messaging that we get, and it covers everything, and reproductive freedom. Because you're right, it's not just abortion. I mean, now they're talking about birth control. I mean, every single decision, anytime. I mean, yeah, so it's more than that. And I think the broadest way to say it, and the best way to say it, in my opinion, reproductive freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody can agree that we don't need a taking of freedom. I mean, that's what it is. So if I had to say that works, that covers everything, reproductive freedom.
Part of the idea here is and we got this too, is that there's no reason to apologize for saying the word, any particular word that's associated with reproductive freedom. But look, here we are. We're all scared, even, so, but I take your comments there, and we can reformulate that urgent action slide to say women lost the right to reproductive freedom that we had known for generations. And then I guess it can be on individuals to decide when and how to talk about that. But we all agree that that's a core elevating issue. And so how about so I would take and make that change on that initial slide. Do you have thoughts about the presentation of that topic on slide 12? Because that says, it does also say, including safe and legal abortion. That is a part of a broader conversation.
The way that's presented, and it's further down in the platform, it just kind of jumped out at me as one of the first slides, which is more of a general statement. So yeah, I think the.
All right. If I just want to keep moving through this because
Yeah.
I'm conscious we're getting close to the hour. There were not major changes to 13 or 14 for public education, foster care, child care. No changes for well, there was changes a little bit to slide 16 to say health care for all. I think we made all. I don't. Does anyone have comments on the healthcare slides? There were some comments about slide 17, which is addressing the public option. The public option is in the National Democratic Party platform. It's one of the only big national policies that gets its own section of the Democratic National Committee's platform. It's not specific, and in fact this slide says we're not being specific. It says the public option will provide at least one plan with deductibles. It'd be administered publicly, cover primary care, everyone will be eligible, but those are just general principles. And this has been a big rallying point for the Democratic Party, and so that's why it's in there. It's been a pretty significant part of the national platform. Just the option. It's not eliminating private health insurance. This is just to say competition, a meaningful public competition, so that there's a public option. And that's and does anyone have comments on any of the healthcare slides, 16 or 17? If not, I'm going to go and you can comment more. We'll do a wrap up at the end, but there were also no major changes to well, that's not true. There were some changes to slide 18. We added some specifics because people commented they wanted to see distributed generation, energy efficiency, and electric transit be named as energy sources. So we did add, under reducing the cost of energy, we said, we have this old infrastructure, and specifically we could be supporting these types of generation. We still make the point that emissions reductions can occur with all fuel sources. Each fuel source can and must play a part in reducing emissions. So we're still sticking with our longstanding all of the above position on fuel sources. So that was the main change there, to name distributed generation. That's been a bipartisan rallying point too. The Republicans have passed a number of bills on promoting distributed generation. Yes, Troy.
I don't have the slide in front of me, so if this is stated, forgive me. One of the things I think we can say about the history of West Virginia and what we're seeing now here in Jefferson County with the development of solar is I think people are pretty tired of seeing us develop energy generation that goes out of the state and then causes our rates to go up because of how the export versus internal state production is happening. And so I feel like this is a great place to make a line of we are for all of the above energy generation. I mean, we have personal opinions about that, but also that we really want to make sure that that is benefiting ratepayers in West Virginia. Because I think it's one thing to produce a lot more energy, and I think it's another thing to produce a lot more energy that lowers rates for West Virginia ratepayers.
That is set first as the first bold bullet point on this slide, reducing costs, utility costs for West Virginia. So that is the number one point that we make on this slide.
Fantastic, and I apologize for my interjection.
Slide 19 is a good point. I think there was broad agreement on that. Slide 19 is environment. That there were some minor tweaks to that. People have thoughts about it. Just stop me, but I'm going to keep going on. Protecting democracy is slide 20. That is generally unchanged as well. Slide 21, we had a few different suggestions. People wanted a constitutional amendment on big money in politics. People wanted a language about ballot initiatives. There were some comments back and forth on that. what I've offered here is a general statement about direct participation in government, because we haven't, as a party, adopted a position on, to my knowledge, on more specifically, what we stand for. The old platform says it has several points about campaign conduct and campaign finance, repealing Citizens United, and enforcing campaign finance rules. But we haven't discussed that. A lot has changed since 2016. So here's what we say on this point. Direct participation in government is the heading. And then it says Democrats promote more opportunities for citizens to directly engage in their government through elections and initiatives consistent with the core values of our platform. So it's a general statement promoting citizen participation, both in government, perhaps through ballot initiatives, if that's where the will of the party leads us, perhaps through a more equitable campaign finance system, so that citizens' voices are more readily heard in elections. It's a general statement. I'll move on, but if people did have thoughts about that, would people like us to add? We can simply add from our existing platform that we support the regulation, or we support the a fair playing field for candidates for public office, something to that effect. Does anyone believe we should change what's there currently in the draft of slide 22, or should we move on? Excuse me, this is slide 21. All right, I think people's patience may be wearing thin. Let's go through the immigration slide, basically unchanged. I think it's unchanged entirely. Same with global leadership. We emphasized veterans and military, honoring both of those groups. I'll make the same change to use the word Republicans instead of GOP. And that is pretty much the whole platform. So does anyone have any summary thoughts or questions, having reviewed all of it?
Is it typical on a platform to have one versus the other?
I think that is not something we've had in our platform before. We talked about adding that, and Troy sort of voiced this. The part of the concept with this slideshow style platform is to give people a tool so that they can actually use the platform in making slideshows and presentations at their county Democratic women's meeting or other places where they may be presenting about the Democratic Party. So with the idea of sort of restyling this platform as a instrument for talking and presenting about our values, we were wanting to add the contrast so that we give people some guidance about how to draw a contrast in a compelling contrast, a favorable, useful contrast between us and the other major party here. So it's not been typically part of the platform, but it is a part of the recasting of what a platform can be used for, that we're trying to achieve with this slideshow format.
Okay,
does that make sense, Patty?
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, Jared.
No, was it being mindful of the time and just how it got brought up earlier in our meeting? I think perhaps we should also consider the powerful tools at our disposal that are resolutions at the convention, for perhaps points that did not make it in this platform at this point, or for anyone that was attending or listening in now. If there's anything that you feel, that you would like to see included in the future platform, even if not now, perhaps a resolution is the way to start getting that moving forward, start getting, endorsements on that, start having those conversations and seeing where that common ground lies, and thinking about how you could use those to advance your, different platform points in the future, but through that mechanism of resolutions.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's part of what delivered this platform for us is that we adopted the Economic Bill of Rights through resolution. And we sort of want to think about that as the mechanism for how our platform evolves and grows over time. So absolutely very good point, and it's a good wrap-up point. So we hope we do see some resolutions and we continue evolving and improving. So please, right at this point, I think, could we say that sort of by acclamation, there's nobody in this working group who would veto the presentation or who has concerns about the presentation of this document at the convention. It's just the product of a working group. It'll be presented to the convention as a whole body, and it will be presented as the product of collaboration and a lot of input, and it will be subject to further consideration by the convention at large. Is everyone comfortable with that approach?
Yeah. Did you make the few little changes I think kind of had consensus on?
I believe we changed, we starting at the beginning, we changed reproductive free. What I can do is I can recirculate the version after the changes made tonight, so you all can look at that. And if people want to reply to the drafting group with some further thoughts or tweaks, that's great. That's fine. Please do that, and we can make those tweaks between now and the convention. But at this point, I believe I attempted to incorporate all the feedback that we agreed upon here this evening.
Great. All righty. Thanks,
Thank
Sam.
you,
Thanks
Sam.
for everything.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. And Patty, I know each of you put a lot of time into this, so thanks. I hope it will have durable value for all of us. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for
Bye.
heading this up, Sam, and thank everybody who participated. Really appreciate all the work y'all put into this. Thank you.